Hello and welcome to the 45th episode of the Pirate Rugby Pod. We've got a jam-packed show coming up today, covering a huge finals weekend of rugby, including URC, Super Rugby, PWR, and our first round of test matches of the season.
If you're listening to the audio version of this, please give us a lovely 5-star review. And if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe and leave us a lovely comment. If you're nice, we always reply. You can find our socials in the Linktree link in the description box down below. And you can follow our Substack to get our Friday newsletter and our long read articles every Sunday. This week, we did a look into rugby's problematic reliance on air travel and how it's not an issue that's going away anytime soon. No guest this week, just me and Enda. So let's crack straight on with our rugby moment of the week. You can go first. What was your rugby moment of the week?
Mine is a boring one, but look, it was the moment for me, and that was Glasgow winning the URC against, for me, all odds. We've had 3 seasons of the URC. We've had 3 different winners. So for me, that just shows how successful this tournament's been and how competitive the South African teams have made it. I love it. I bought into it. And for me, yeah, just that Glasgow win typifies what the URC is all about. Everyone apart from maybe what scrumming fly half had written them off. So yeah, my moment of the week.
And Ryan Wilson. Ryan Wilson.
And Ryan Wilson, to be fair. By the way, I have to say he is doing a great job, I think, in the media space. He's a character and it kind of comes across. And I like that. I don't know how he seems to be very popular, but I think he's doing a great job on Premier Sports. Sometimes you can get this lads culture coming across, but I think he's just a bit different. And yeah, I like him. What was your moment of the week, mate?
So I've got 2. The first one was the funny one in the England-Japan game when Bevan Rods, the English loosehead, or tight head, prop, they get awarded a penalty just 5 meters out from Japan's line. And Bevan Rods taps and goes, but on his own. And then he realizes that like none of his teammates are set and he's kind of done it like off the cuff and he realizes he shouldn't have done. So he just kind of tries to act like he never did it. And he just like stops and he's like, oh yeah, no, where are we going? Where are we going? But unfortunately, the ref has seen him and the ref goes, you've tapped it. And he's like, oh no. And then all the Japanese players tackle him and things. So I just thought that was entertaining seeing just the moment of like trying to act like he didn't tap it. And then my second moment of the week is Alex Callender, Wales captain, who's not technically captain, liked a tweet of mine. So that was a nice moment. It's always nice when an international rugby player likes a tweet, and it to be someone as revered and loved as Alex Callender was a nice moment for me. So I'm always going to mention things like that. Listeners' moment of the week. So Maz says UBB making the top 14 final for the first time ever. More on that later. Scrumming Fly Half sticks with top 14 moments and mentions La Rochelle's meltdown against Toulouse, where they got 2 red cards. Again, more on that later. And then Poor Relations Rugby, who's been a great friend to us on Twitter lately, says in the URC final, where there was a bit of a scuffle, and over the tannoy, they played the boxing ding-ding, ringing of a bell, whilst the players were having a bit of a handbags. I always like that. I always like that kind of thing. I in big games, I like a bit of a set 2, shall we say. And then Scarlet's Fever podcast says Alex Craig signing a new deal to stay at the club after he was the player of the season this season. Fantastic moments of the week all round. But there's only one place to go next, and it is the URC final, the thing that we've been building up to all season. As you've referenced there, mate, a historic win for Glasgow. What was your thoughts on the game?
Defense wins titles. I'm going to steal Josh Gardner's stat here from the Blood and Mud podcast. And it really captures, I think, for me, why Glasgow won this game and potentially why they won the tournament as a whole. And yeah, his stat is that the Bulls missed 41 tackles in the URC final and Glasgow missed 42 tackles in the entire URC playoff. So I think that really kind of highlights where Glasgow's defence is at. And it's something that you've been talking about a lot this so far. During this season, I should say, was how poor the Bulls' defence has been, and especially in terms of how many tries and points they were conceding. So I think that it was really that really came to the fore, I think, this past weekend. And it wasn't a once-off that playoff run for Glasgow. They've been like that all season. They're number one when you look at the stats. In terms, they're third. They've got the third best defensive stats of all URC teams. They come first in tackle success. They're at 91%, highest in the league. They missed the least amount of tackles out of all 16 teams. But more importantly, they've the best defense, the best, I can't talk tonight. They've got the best attack in the league. And I do want to make a special shout out to Nigel Carlin, who is the attack coach for Glasgow, former Connacht player and former Connacht coach. So he's obviously been doing a great job. So Glasgow are the number one attacking side. Not many teams from the Northern Hemisphere go down to Loftus Versfield and score 3 tries. So I think that was really impressive. But for me, this game was won and lost in defence, and that's where Glasgow really stood up to the Bulls, particularly that last play of the game. With you'd expect the Bulls to go over in that ball, and then you could, like, I certainly had that confidence, especially from a neutral's perspective, that I wasn't one bit surprised, that Glasgow were able to hold it up and the ref blew it up for a turnover. So that's where the game was won and lost for me at defence. What about yourself, mate? What were your thoughts on the overall game?
Yeah. I think I completely agree with you. I did a thread on Glasgow during the week, looking at their stats of the season and what makes them work. And you kind of zone in on 3 things for Glasgow. Number 1 is defence. And defence statistically is so hard to say, prove this is how good the defence is. All you can look at is, you can look at a bit of tackle success, but you can look at how many points and things they concede. And a good one from Opta was that 75% of the tackles that Glasgow do miss, that player who avoided a tackle is then tackled. So the missed tackles don't tend to lead to anything. And that's all about attitude. Coaches say that defence is an attitude, and Glasgow have just got that in them. Maybe Franco Smith is scary. Maybe they're scared of what he'll do to them if they don't defend properly. But it's about effort for Glasgow. And, that's not very... I keep finding myself turning into a bit of a passion merchant and just saying, they tried harder or they wanted it more or whatever. But the defence was one thing that they just managed to get right. They have the right mentality about it, and they never know when they're beaten, and they've been able to keep teams out all season. And going through the stats for Glasgow, I did find myself, I backed the Bulls to win the title from the beginning of the season, and you best believe that I had clipped up me from September saying that I thought the Bulls were going to win it, ready for when they did. Oh well, never mind. Consigned to history. No one will remember. I did find myself, when I was going through Glasgow stats, thinking it would be cool if Glasgow won this, because it would be a hell of an achievement, and it is reflective of their performances all season. They were top of the log for a long old time, and they kind of lost it a bit at the end, a disappointing tour to South Africa, but in the end, the kind of fixtures kind of went their way, because it meant that Leinster had to play harder fixtures, perversely. So, I'll get to my point eventually. So, the defence was one of the 3 things. The other 2 things were the maul, which is no surprise. Everyone knows that Glasgow's maul is phenomenal. They've got 1.2 maul tries per game. The next best is 0.4, so 3 times more try-scoring maul than anybody else in the URC. Mental stat. And then it's the use of the wings. They play wider than anybody else. And these are like 3 stats that you don't think a team that does one of these would do the other 2. You don't think the team with the best maul is also the team that plays the widest. You don't think the team with the best defence is the one that plays the widest. But it happened, and it's just so effective. And I think my kind of takeaway, and it's something that we'll talk about when we talk about other finals later on, is the team that plays the same in the final as they play all season is the team that tends to do the best. And I think the Bulls, they played a certain way all season, and when it came to knockout footy, they had to go to a different game plan. They had to tighten up. They had to play differently. Whereas Glasgow just kept playing the same way. The only kind of concession that Glasgow made is they kicked the posts more. So, stat for you, in the regular season, 18 rounds of the URC, Glasgow kicked penalty goals 6 times in the whole season. Once every 3 games. That's insane. And they didn't miss a single one.
Have you tweeted that? And if not, you should.
I tweeted it about, because Edinburgh made the most. So 25% of Edinburgh's points all this season came from Ben Healy's penalty kicks. Also a crazy stat. So yeah, just a hats off to Glasgow. They 100% deserved it, as everybody has said. To be fair, I've seen a lot of Bulls fans saying, yeah, you deserved it. And I think a lot of people are kind of like, no, but this is good for the competition, because if we could very easily have been looking at 2 titles for the Stormers, 1 title for the Bulls, and 1 runners-up medal for the Bulls out of the 3 seasons so far. And if it was that way, people would kind of be going, this is just a South African walkover of a league. But it's not. It's really competitive. And the fact that the South Africans have had all 3 finals but only won 2 of them, I mean, it's painful for those guys, but it's really makes it special. And I love that it kind of dispels the kind of it's impossible to win in South Africa kind of thing. It's really hard. And I think what makes this victory so special for Glasgow is that the fact that they've done it in probably what is the hardest away day in all of rugby, club rugby. That's what makes it special. But it's not impossible, which is what keeps it intriguing. It's not like in Super Rugby where winning away in New Zealand is impossible. So,
yeah, and they won the semi-final away against Munster in Thomond Park, and then had such a tight turnaround to get down to South Africa. And it was so refreshing as well not to hear the Glasgow management or the players complain about that travel, complain about all this, that, and the other, about the tight turnaround. It was just, yeah, they just got on with it and got the job done, and just, as you said, showed that it can be done.
So, question for you then. You brought Munster into it. So Munster beat the Stormers in Cape Town last season, having finished 7th in the league. And it was, I said, one of the most incredible rugby achievements ever. How does this Glasgow achievement compare to that? Is this Glasgow title win better than Munster's title win last season? Which do you think is the standout title for the URC so far?
For me, maybe it's because it's so fresh, but I just really think that this Glasgow win was probably pips the Munster one, and then the main reason for that is just when you look at kind of Scottish rugby as a whole, where it is and where it's coming from, and the fact that Glasgow haven't won anything in years, and they've only ever won the league once before, and they've been consistent all season in terms of being on top or close to the top. And I think that that's important. So I think for me, one of the best teams won, and that's really important. It wasn't kind of a team that went on a good run, say, towards at the end of the season. And yeah, I think just from that perspective, just when you look at Scottish rugby, where it is still, especially at international level, this for me is probably bigger. I think the Munster one last year, again, it was special. Like, they were both, obviously it's difficult. Like, it's a difficult question, right? There's no right or wrong answer. And obviously last year's win by Munster was special as well. It was their first trophy in many years. It's something they needed. Again, they did it in really impressive fashion as well. An absolutely cracking game, against the reigning champions. That was special in its own right as well. I just think, from a Scottish rugby perspective, this one is huge. This Glasgow win is absolutely huge. And for the league as well, as there are still people somehow, questioning the relevancy of the URC and whether or not its fans should stay. This, that, and the other negative thing you could say about it. But one thing you simply cannot say anymore is that it's dominated by Irish sides. That's simply not the case. Even when you look at Europe now, it is certainly not dominated by Irish sides. So yeah, this competition for me, and that win for me, is just all very positive, and for me just pips it slightly in Glasgow's favour. But again, like, it's a completely subjective question. But yeah, great for the league overall. Yeah. What's your take on it? Would you be leaning one way or the other, or?
I think Munster's was more dramatic, going from 7th and winning away ties in the whole run-in to get the title. I think it was more Hollywood. And I love a bit of Cape Town, I have to say. I think, even though it was in a losing cause, when Manny Lebok intercepted that pass and ran under the sticks with Cape Town going absolutely mad around it, that's not something I'll ever forget. But I think Glasgow, over the course of the full season, were better than Munster were last year. I think Munster this year were better than they were last year. They just haven't lifted the title. And then I think purely for the altitude factor, I think Pretoria is harder than Cape Town. So I have to get, in terms of a rugby achievement, I'd have to say that I think Glasgow's is better. I think in terms of a Hollywood, which one are you making a movie about? Probably Munster's achievement. So it's great. It's just great to have these storylines, and it's you have to remember that Munster and Glasgow hate each other as well, and that just feeds it so much for me. I just think I think that's fantastic. A word on the Bulls though. Jake White put all his eggs in the URC basket this year. To be fair, he's only got 2 baskets to choose from, and he was not happy after the game. You know, made some comments about the referee that we don't think much of. It must suck for the Bulls right now, and they haven't got that many players in the Springbok squad now. Like David Creel, who's got the most try involvements of anybody in the URC, hasn't been picked for the Boks. A word on them: is it tough on them? Is Jake White going to be having sleepless nights for months after this?
I don't think so. Just like the question I was posed a few weeks ago about Leinster, like I don't think Bulls now are in a bad spot. They're not losing an awful lot of players. They're actually gaining some talent as well. The fundamentals are there. I'd imagine Jake White's going to be around next season. There's no doubt that he is an excellent coach. Just look at his track record. Yeah, the comments by him were really disappointing and negative, but I think from a social media perspective, it was great to, I think there was a unanimous kind of verdict in terms of everyone just being kind of pissed off at him for those comments, because there was absolutely no need, and everybody I think would agree as well that the ref overall did a good job. And this nonsense about away teams winning, it's just quite funny when you look at the URC 1 final. I've
never heard an allegation of the ref being biased in favour of the away team.
Yeah, it was just, there was just no need for, like, it's just for me it's easier to say that Glasgow are better on the day, which I think I've seen most Bulls fans say that. I think a lot of fans are just delighted for them as well. Of all teams to lose to, it's probably not. I don't think the Glasgow would be one team you'd really hate to lose against. Like if it were Leinster, I think it'd be a lot different.
And to the point that we often find ourselves making, then we made it with Leinster as well. Like the Bulls were a driving maul at the end away from winning it. If Glasgow hadn't scored right on half time, I don't think they would have won it. It was a huge moment in the game. There was a couple of breaks. I think Williams, the fullback for the Bulls, made a break. I think
he's a winger. Yeah, sorry, he's a winger.
Yeah, I think he was playing at fullback in this game though, because Willie LaRue was out. He made a break, and he had Curtly Aronson to his left and didn't manage to find him. I think if he'd have kicked ahead or passed the ball earlier, I think Aronson was in. And either of those moments are a coin toss. And if they go the other way, then it's a completely different story, and it's a glorious win for the Bulls, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not panic stations. We know that every time a team loses, there's always a desire for people to go mad. It is a bit of a shame for the Bulls because I was backing them, like I said, but you can't be mad at Glasgow.
Yeah, and I think Willie LaRue, obviously, we haven't mentioned him yet. He was a big loss, particularly when you look at his semi-final performance, the way they played to the edge, the way he's a second playmaker. That's what he is. It's like having 2 fly halves on the pitch. But he was definitely missed as well.
Oh, it's cool. What else is on the agenda today then?
So the next thing we have up is, we've spoken about the history of Glasgow. We've talked, is there anything else you want to chat about in terms of that game, or are we happy to move on to...
No, I think just congratulations to Glasgow. I don't think there's anything else for me to add.
Yeah. Now, one game we'll start off with, maybe we'll quickly run through it. I don't know, it depends on your thoughts on the game, but Wales had a loss against South Africa. I don't think there are any surprises there. The halftime score was extremely respectable, I think, especially from a neutral perspective. What were your thoughts on the overall game and result? And is the Welsh national men's team improving, or are they stagnating? Are they going backwards? Obviously, there was that rumor that's been released too about a player leaving camp. Like, what's your take on the whole, not just on the game, but on the whole situation in terms of where Wales are at.
It's not good. No, I didn't see any progress in this game. I don't really know what Wales's first choice team is at the moment. I don't know what our best centre combination is. This one of Grady and Watkin, I don't think worked. The pack is getting absolutely destroyed. You know, okay, we were up against the Springboks, who are probably the best pack in the world, but still, it wasn't even competitive. I think the ref Chris Busby was a little bit kind to us at times in terms of the scrum, letting us play on. Just in terms the game plan, if we're still doing Warren Ball, which I believe that we are, you know, the way that we attacked in the past was pick and go around the corner, high level of carrying sort of game. It's not dissimilar to Ireland's attack. It's just way worse. Like just massively lacking in detail, no deception at all, and no physicality. And the proof is in the pudding. You know, if we're trying to do a high volume of carry, pick and go type attack, sucking defenders in, we made 70 carries in the whole game. Not enough, not anywhere near enough. But for people who may be less familiar with stats, anything less than 100 carries is low. Anything less than 90 carries in a match is particularly low. 70 carries is mad low. Now, there are teams in the URC like the Lions and the Bulls who make crazy few number of carries, but they score loads of tries because they strike when they're hot and they're efficient with it. Wales are not that. And Jamie from Rat pointed out as well that it was another half of rugby where Wales failed to score a point. And serious questions need to be asked of the attacking shape because it's just non-existent. The only time that the Welsh attack has looked good recently was back in the Six Nations in the two games that were lost against Scotland and against Italy, where we were done. The game was finished, the game was lost, and so the players just started chucking the ball about and we managed to get a few line breaks. One line break in the game from Liam Williams. Mental low. That is low by anyone's standards. One line break. Again, Liam Williams was Wales's top meters maker with 20. Bear in mind, fullbacks normally get like 80 meters a game just running the ball back from kicks. And South Africa just didn't kick long. They only kicked contestable. And we just have no way of making meters. 124 meters, 68 of those were a combination of Aaron Wainwright and Dewey Lake. And Dewey Lake got about 15 of his in the run-in for his try. Like, it's panic stations at this point. I'm sorry. It really is with our attacking game plan. The defense was mostly okay, but there were a couple of embarrassing moments. You know, the Evan Roos break where the defense was, the two backfield cover players were completely split. No one was anywhere near him. If that was Lee Halfpenny there, he'd have tackled him on the 22. But no one was around. No one fancied making that tackle. And it happened again with Edwil van der Merwe in the second half where he scored. It's tough. It's tough. And like you referenced, there's been a bit of a saga with one of the players leaving camp. So have you managed to follow this saga at all much?
I've only seen the headline. I have heard some remarks by Gatland in terms of, you know, he's obviously not happy with the agent. He says that if the player had to come to him, it might have been a different situation. That's what I've heard. But if it's true that a player has left, which it sounds like it is over how he was treated, that's very shocking and just not a rugby environment I don't think anybody would want to be in, particularly when you look at a successful side like Ireland's, when all you hear is positive thoughts and, you know, just murmurings. It's all just so positive. Like, it's annoyingly positive at times, but it does seem like it's a really nice environment to be in and that the players like to be there. And then you read or hear about something like this, it just seems like the opposite. What's your take on the whole situation?
It was a weird saga. So Sam Parry is the player that we're talking about. So the timeline is this. So on the Friday night before the game, the Mail Online broke a story that Sam Parry had up and left camp because he felt that he'd been disrespected in camp by the coaches. So it was broken by a journalist called Alex Bywater, who has gained a lot of favour amongst Welsh rugby fans due to his coverage of the threatened strike action during the Six Nations a couple of years ago, where he came out of that very well and covered it excellently. He has also been known to, shall we say, be a bit opportunist with some of his journalism. So, for example, he asked Alan Wynne-Jones for an interview a year or so ago, and Alan Wynne-Jones said no. And Alex Bywater then went on to publish essentially a hit piece on Alan Wynne-Jones, criticising his character and his behaviour and things like that. So, yeah, that's a bit unfortunate. So the game happens, and everyone's asking Gatland about it. The stories are that Sam Parry believed that he was called up to be in contention for selection, and then he quickly realised that the coaches had no intention of picking him. And there are things like other stories that I don't know if they're true, but things I've heard is that like he was given less kits than everybody else because the expectation was that he'd be going home sooner rather than later, things like that. Again, I don't know. Sam Parry has not been quoted anywhere. None of this has directly come from him. The feeling that Gatland suggested was that his agent has been talking to the press to get this story out there. Gatland is then asked about it, and Gatland reveals that Sam Parry didn't leave the camp on Friday. He actually left the camp on the Monday or the Tuesday, which straight away begs two questions. The first is, why did the WRU not just announce that Sam Parry had withdrawn from the squad? Say, Sam Parry has withdrawn from the Wales squad for personal reasons, and we've called up XYZ in his place. Could have gotten ahead of it, could have stopped it ever becoming a thing. It also shows that the Mail have sat on the story and released it at opportune moments to create the most buzz, which is not unusual. It's not an outrageous thing to allege. It happens in other sports, other walks of life all the time, not just sport, in general news. So Gatland then says that Parry didn't even come and speak to him, and he just up and left. He then says that some of the other players tried to talk to Parry to get him to try and patch things up, and that didn't happen. Gatland also says that he was upfront with Parry with what his selection was. Now, it's not unusual that players get called up to squads and then don't get played. A load of players have just been released by South Africa who didn't play. The one that springs to my mind is Josh Turnbull has won 3 Six Nations titles with Wales without playing a minute on the pitch, was only in the training squad for those. So it's unusual. The details of what the disrespect that Sam Parry allegedly was on the receiving end of, we don't know. If it was a case that he was bullied or ridiculed by the coaches, I'd have a very strong view on that. And that is something that other players have alleged about Warren Gatland in the past, but that's not what's been alleged in this case. If it's a case of he's not been picked and so he's got the hump and left, I have to be honest, I don't understand why it's created such a big furore on social media. And that is certainly a way of interpreting it. So we don't know. I think my biggest takeaway from this saga has been the appetite there is amongst a lot of Welsh fans for anything that's against Gatland as well. And this is just a symptom of a team that's losing and playing badly. The Sam Parry's an Osprey, and the Ospreys fans are very not in favour of Gatland. So Ospreys were comfortably the best Welsh region in the URC this season and only got 3 players now touring Australia from the Ospreys, and there's like 9 from Cardiff, 7 from Scarlets, who won 4 and 5 games respectively. So I think there's like 4 players from the Dragons who won 3 games. And just generally there's people who have never liked Gatland and are happy for any story that makes him look bad. So it just generally feeds into the extremely negative feeling around Welsh rugby at the moment. I am part of a Welsh rugby podcast, and I'm part of that social media, and I have to say that social media over the weekend was pretty horrible. Welsh rugby Twitter is bad at the best of times, but I think some of the things that were being said about players by some big accounts were very unfair and very out of order, and I have a bit of a problem with it, to be honest. So it's just not fun, unfortunately, for Wales at the moment. I mean, We have some Springbok listeners, so I'll just say about the Springboks that Edward van der Merwe has given Razzie a headache. Which scrum capped winger does he pick next? Because he had a fantastic game. Jordan Hendrickson didn't have a great game, and he's now out of the tour. Well, not touring squad. He's now out of the Islands series, having started this game. So that's tough on him. Other than that, I think South Africa just basically went through the motions, really, and that's all it took to beat Wales. So a bit of a. I'm a bit over that. I'm not looking forward to Wales's next game. I'm not planning on covering Wales's summer in any great detail. It's not a fun time covering my own team at the moment. I'd much rather cover other teams, to be honest with you.
Speaking of fun times, Japan v England. Will we skip it or will we discuss it? Because I hate one-sided games. I really do. I was not that excited for this game. I thought the game itself was meh. Like, I don't know. Like, I there are people suggesting that England could go to New Zealand now and win some games down there, which I think is absolutely outrageous. What are your thoughts, mate? Do you want to spend any time in this game?
Well,
it was. I mean, the narrative was great.
Yeah.
Eddie Jones v. Borthwick, but what did you think?
It was a captain's run. It was uncompetitive. Japan looks. It's really disappointing about Japan, to be honest. And I think we need to start having a bit of a chat now. I worked out that since Japan beat Scotland at the 2019 World Cup, they've lost 15 consecutive Test matches against Tier 1 opposition. Now, for a team that was supposed to be the next big thing, was supposed to be the disruptor of world rugby, they've had enough time now. They've had enough investments. They've got the coaches in Japan League One now. They've got the foreign players to learn off, and it's just not translating into improved national side performances. They looked a mile off it in terms of the physicality needed to play Tier 1 international rugby. I think they've won 6 games in the last 3 years. They lost 2 games at home in the Pacific Nations Cup. They lost at home to Samoa last season. Like, it's not really good enough, and England weren't really tested at all. A lot of their tries were walk-ins, unopposed. I think the time has come now to be a bit harsher on Japan, because and it comes from a place of wanting them to do well and wanting this new player. Remember, they're going to be in this whole new Nations League thing above a team like Georgia, and you'd have to say that, well, Georgia didn't have a great World Cup either, to be fair, but Japan just really not the team they were in 2019 in terms of competitiveness. And England's look, they're playing against a New Zealand team that are in unreal levels of transition, new coaches, new players, new everything. I don't know. This game was not preparation for playing the All Blacks in any shape or form.
Absolutely not. Now, in positive news, the BaaBaas Fiji game was pretty good, and BaaBaas got a good win. Did you catch much of this game, mate?
Not really. I managed to catch the highlights. Unfortunately, there was a lot of game clashes this weekend. BaaBaas got the win. I think what a lot of people don't realise is how far away this Fiji team was from their first choice. So they it wasn't a full Drua side. It was like a changed Drua team, not even a full Fiji international team. I think Simon Royalui tweeted about how much adversity they had even getting to this game, the travel to it, the time that they had together. So it was a loss. It was a win for the BaaBaas. The Currie Cup was then. It was the last ever game for Sam Whitelock, I believe. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure. So yeah, it was just a great day out. By all accounts, it was a doubleheader at Twickenham. Just hopefully Fiji get a bit more time and cohesion together. They've got a new head coach this season, and just Drew haven't had a great season. Their players scattered to the 4 wins. So we love Fiji. Our first big pod in terms of numbers was about Fiji, so fingers crossed they managed to get it together, but a little bit worried about them this season. I hope I'm wrong, of course I do, but I'm not getting good vibes from them, which is, like I say, and I'm coming from a place of love as always.
And did you want to move on to some women's rugby that you wanted to touch on?
Yeah, just very quickly mention it. So I didn't watch these international games. Japan played Fiji the last 2 weeks. I didn't realize once you get to like tier 2 women's teams, it's extremely hard to find the fixtures or even realize they're on. But Japan played Fiji, 2-test series in Fiji. Both games finished 24 points to 15, but Japan won one and Fiji won the other. So Fiji and Japan in the women's game seem to play each other a lot. So that's obviously a rivalry that I need to learn more about. But yeah, just interesting. But I think both these teams are going to be in WXV2 next season, maybe Fiji in WXV3. I'm not sure. Anyway, we'll be covering WXV when it's on. So yeah, so I just wanted to give a shout out to that. Also, a couple of other results. I found that for whatever reason, the USA men's team website covers like all international rugby. So I can tell you that the South Korea got battered by Hong Kong, 67 points to 7, which suggests that Hong Kong are very likely to qualify for the next World Cup because Asia now gets an automatic spot. So that will be Hong Kong, probably, unless there's a big turnaround. I can tell you that Trinidad and Tobago beat Guyana 26 points to 3. And on Friday, United Arab Emirates beat Malaysia 62 points to 19. All these things I've learned. I don't know why the USA men's team website reports all this, but they do. So thank you. And that's the end of the international rugby, as far as I'm aware.
Great stuff. So shall we move on to our roundup from around the world?
Yeah. Let's do it.
I think there's only one place to start, and that's the Super Rugby Final. The Blues have finally done it. What are your thoughts on the game?
One-sided affair. The Blues have been physically, in terms of the forward pack, the dominant team in Super Rugby this season, and they've had the best defence. The Chiefs' main thing is their line breaks and their ability to convert line breaks into tries. Unfortunately, day of the game, it was absolutely peeing it down in Auckland. And as soon as I saw the weather, I was like, oh, okay, well, this is the Blues game. And so it proved. Very one-sided scoreline. Caleb Clark scored a hat-trick. Enda, I'm officially sorry to Caleb Clark. Especially because of the speech he gave after the game, talking about his family and how much it meant to his family and how happy he was and things. So I'm a Caleb Clark fan now. I have full 180'd. Yeah, and just congratulations to the Blues. I'd love to see the Blues play against some Northern Hemisphere opposition because I think with that pack, they could cause some problems. Hot take, the Bulls are definitely in the conversation for the Blues are definitely in the conversation for the best club side in the world for me, just because of their forward pack. Very similar to Glasgow in terms of they have a simple-ish game plan. They don't overplay, and they just stick to it. Vern Cotter, former Scotland coach, has done a fantastic job in his first season. Obviously, the Crusaders falling away is the big story of Super Rugby this season, but Blues fully deserved it. For me, clearly the best team in the competition this season. And like I said, I'd love to see them play against the likes of Toulouse and Glasgow and the Bulls and Northampton and things, because I think it would be a really interesting matchup. Not that well, they've got 9 players in the All Blacks squad, which is the most of any Super Rugby franchise, but not that many in total. It's not like the All Blacks are going to be built around the Blues. Hoskins Tutu didn't make the cut, which a lot of people aren't happy about. But I enjoyed watching the Blues. I like how in the finals we've seen the scorelines close up. I know it was a wide scoreline here, but we've seen the games close up, and we've seen mostly, and we'll talk about it when we get onto the top 14 in a minute, the scorelines have come down. So this Super Rugby final was kind of a bucking of a trend for that. Not a vintage year for Super Rugby, you have to say, but Blues fans won't care. Yeah, historic for them, their first title since like 2003, 2004. So I don't know. What have you? I know you haven't managed to catch that much of Super Rugby in general. What do you make of the competition as a entity at the moment?
I think it's doing okay. The viewing figures from New Zealand, very strong. Viewing figures from Fiji, very strong. The attendance figures in New Zealand are up this year. That's really positive to see. So there are definitely some positives. I think the product on the field is quite similar to how it's been for the last number of years in terms of dominance by New Zealand sides, but we have seen an improvement, I think, in Australian rugby. But then obviously we've had the terrible story that the Rebels have gone bust and they're not coming back to Super Rugby anytime soon. So Yeah, I still think that this competition is missing the South African teams. I don't think it's going to be the same without them. That change is here to stay. Probably I'm glad it is, because we now have a better product here in the north in terms of the URC. But yeah, I just think the Super Rugby is just kind of ticking along at the moment. It'll be interesting to see if the Aguares come back. I don't think it's going to be next season, potentially the season after that. Will that improve things? I don't know. I don't think that I would just highly suspect that the viewing figures in this side of the world, in terms of Ireland and the UK, are great, because Sky literally did not tweet about the competition from the beginning of the competition to the very end. Sky's rugby union account did not make a single tweet about this tournament, which I think is probably a sign of where they are in terms of their coverage of rugby union, where they mainly care about international rugby. But that also does raise the question of whether or not the viewing figures are there and whether the demand is there. It does feel like it's kind of just an add-on to the rugby championship and to the summer series. But who knows? We might never see those figures. But yeah, I suspect the figures aren't great here. But look, for me, it's still a good tournament. I still like the idea of it. It's fun getting up early in the mornings. Unfortunately, I didn't catch much of it this season with other commitments. But I do think there is just something missing. They're down one team now next year, which I think is like that's a problem in and of itself. And yeah, certainly attendance figures at Australian games. I know I would like to point out though as well that the Australian viewing figures have been very strong as well. So I think that's certainly a good thing.
Yeah,
from
Brett
a
McKay,
sponsorship.
Brett McKay told us, didn't he, that they've changed broadcaster and the new broadcaster is doing a much better job.
Yeah, and there are games on free to air as well, which always improves things. So I think, yeah, there are some positives there. It's still a really good product. It's fun to watch, but for me, it's still dominated too much by one country, and that's an issue for me. But yeah, will we move on to the roundup from the rest of the world? There was a pretty big game in the PWR. We had the final. We had Gloucester Hartpury beat Bristol Bears. Looked like there was a great crowd at the match. There was coverage on BBC iPlayer. There was also coverage on TNT Sports. I think they did a great job as well. What were your thoughts on the game, mate?
I didn't know it was on iPlayer. Was it on iPlayer?
It was. It was indeed, yep.
It's the fucking point of having TNT Sports, exactly.
Mate, I put it in the guide. You have no excuse.
Okay. Quid I'll never get back. Yeah, shout out my mate Jake, who was there, because he's from Exeter and the game was played in Exeter. He had a great day out. Probably as close as you can get to a neutral venue for Gloucester versus Bristol, I suppose. A bit of a West Country derby. You could play it in Bath, I suppose. That would be cool. Maybe they could do that next time. Interesting game. Gloucester heavy favourites. Gloucester are like the juggernauts of the women's club game. The stars they've got on their roster are unbelievable. They've got Cecilia Tuipulotu on the bench. A big proportion of Welsh players in both teams. The majority of the Wales national team is spread across these two teams. Bristol took the lead. So, like I said, Gloucester Hartpury massive favourites, but Bristol were leading, I think, 17 points to 10, 17 points to 7 at some point. But then, like, partially into the second half, Gloucester just turned it on. I think it says a lot about the competitiveness of the game that Gloucester Hartpury had to make 190 tackles, which is a lot of tackles. Maybe it says that Bristol's attack wasn't amazing, but it shows that they did test Gloucester Hartpury, and I think lesser teams would have let in a few tries. And then, like I said, the Cherry and Whites just absolutely turned it on, ran in some great tries, and just showed their class, really. And I think, pound for pound, one of the better club sides in all of rugby. So interesting to see that the PWR continue to grow in the future. And from a Welsh point of view, great to see some of those players play well. I thought Clayton George plays completely differently for Gloucester than she does for Wales, and by that I mean really, really well. So yeah, just definitely a tournament that I'm going to pay close attention to in the future, especially as now I know kind of who the main characters and things are. I don't have a team to support though. Like Gloucester is technically the closest to me, but I just don't feel a draw to them, especially because they're clearly the best. It kind of doesn't feel interesting. So I don't know. Maybe people can let me know who my PWR team should be.
Great stuff, mate. And it was also a massive weekend in the top 14. We had the two semi-finals. We Toulouse beat La Rochelle. La Rochelle got 2 red cards. Discipline.
Have you seen the red cards?
I have. Yeah. Fully deserved. What are your thoughts? No?
Well,
Or do you think?
I can't remember what the first one was for. Like, obviously, the second one was for headbutting a man, which is like legit. Can't really argue. I can't remember what the first one was for. Was it just a high shot?
A high shot. Yep.
Yeah. Correct calls. If you're putting yourself in a position to give the referee a reason to send you off, then that's it. It wasn't a brilliant game, I have to say. Toulouse versus La Rochelle. Quite error-strewn, but I think Toulouse are just kind of doing what they need to do. They're the kind of if they were a boxer, they'd win a lot of games by decision, just keeping you using the jab, etc. All those cliches. They don't blow teams away as often as a lot of people would have you believe, as often as they do, say, in the Champions Cup. But yeah, I think everyone knew that Toulouse were going to get to the final. La Rochelle probably did well to recover to their season to get to a semi-final because they really didn't look great for large parts of this season. I feel for Gregory Aldry. He always looks absolutely destroyed whenever La Rochelle lose. But, oh well. Always next year.
I'm sure he checks his bank account. We move on to the second semi-final of the weekend in the top 14.
UBB beat Stade Francais in another not great game. UBB, the Jouet team, scored 2 maul tries. God's sake, nobody's here for that. Jesus, have a word with yourselves. Stade Francais, it was one of those where Stade Francais finished second to win to get the preferential, be nominally the home team in the semi-final. Unfortunately, both semi-finals were played on back-to-back nights in Bordeaux. So Bordeaux were the home team, and I think that's what made the difference at the end. There was a bit of drama to finish the game where, like I said, it wasn't a great game, but Stade Francais scored with the clock in the red and then had a conversion to draw level to force extra time, and then he missed the conversion. So I think the quote that I saw was that it was a level of drama that the game didn't deserve. But look, what a final in store. Toulouse versus UBB. I'm going to do a thread on these on Thursday, and the similarities between these two teams are mad. Like, the stats that OptaTrack, they are like within a couple of % of each other in like every stat. It's crazy how similar these teams are. There are a couple of notable differences. The efficacy of their offloading and their defense is as well, and the scrum. Toulouse have a bit of a better scrum. Not night and day though. And Big Ben Tagliafico is unfortunately out of the final as well, so that hurts UBB's scrum a bit. But I'd love to say that I think that this final is going to be like 41 points to 40 or something, but I'm just not getting that vibe. I don't know about you, mate.
No, not at all. And good news for our listeners and viewers in Ireland and the UK, you can watch this game for free. So you get those French camera angles with French commentary on TV5 Monde. And of course, the game will be shown, if you want to pay for it, on Premier Sports.
With English commentary. So TV5 Monde is French commentary. And the Chromecast doesn't work, TV5 Monde. But fortunately, I've already paid for Premier Sports. Just what you said there about the camera angles, it did remind me that the English co-commentator was like in a break in play was like, it's like a movie in here. It's unreal. There's cameras filming cameras. Like the French know how to film a rugby match. I think they get a lot of stick of it. It looks great. And so whenever like I have to look for pictures for thumbnails or whatever for games, the French can take a class photo of a rugby match. For some reason, South Africans hate taking photos of rugby matches. Don't know why, but French are great at it. Can I get a prediction for a winner?
I'm going to lose to do the double.
I'm going to back you, baby, because it'll be the first time they've
ever
won
Maz.
it. I think it's more fun for you, baby, to win it. But I think Toulouse are clearly the best team in the top 14. What else next, mate? Have we had a bit of MLR action?
Have indeed. Huge result as Vaqueros San Diego beat Sabercats, whilst there was a high-scoring game between Utah and Dallas that ended 50 points to 46 in Utah's favor. Miami Sharks got another win, beating Old Glory 17-12, but the conference standings are pretty much unchanged. Now, I believe you wanted to finish with a bit of Currie Cup Division 1.
Is Currie Cup SA Cup? Right, so this is late. So any South African fans listening to this are thinking, what? This finished ages ago. Yes, it did. Didn't realise it was happening. No one tweeted about it. No one told me. So it's because they've moved the Currie Cup to be in the Northern Hemisphere summer, Southern Hemisphere winter now, to avoid clashing it with the URC. And so that's kicking off July. I think 5th of July is the first game. But they had this SA Cup thing to fill the time, which was all of the non-franchise teams. So Sharks, Bulls, Stormers, Lions all have teams that play in the Currie Cup. So this didn't involve those. And then it had also the Division 1 Cup teams as well. So long story short, the Greekers won it, Suzuki Greekers. They were unbeaten. They won 9 games out of 9. Pumas were second. Griffins were third. And Cheetahs were only fourth, which is a bit sad. I thought Cheetahs were supposed to be like the good ones. But they only won 6 games, lost 3. Boland Cavaliers were fifth. Valky, which I'm probably pronouncing wrong, were 6th. Leopards, then SWD Eagles, Eastern Province. It doesn't say Eastern Province Elephants here, but I think the team name is Eastern Province Elephants, which makes it my favourite team name ever. And then Boulder Bulldogs were 0 wins from 9 at the bottom. So, yeah, this finished a month ago, but I didn't know. So there you go.
But we're also so obviously with the Currie Cup now, the way they've rejigged things, we've got the Currie Cup, which starts soon enough, but also Division 1 has started. So
Has it?
we just finished round 2, and it is the Boland Cavaliers who are on top. The EP Elephants, you'll be glad to hear, are in second.
Come on, Elephants.
So that's kicked off. Yeah. So unfortunately, there is zero coverage of this in our part of the world, unfortunately. But yeah, we're in these just finished the second round of the Currie Cup First Division. Fun fact.
Right. We'll do our best to cover
discuss.
this a bit better. Right, into the TV guide then, mate. So what broadcasting news has there been this week?
A few little interesting bits for people if they wanted to stay up to date. So in terms of good news, we've got news that Rugby Pass TV will be showing the upcoming World Rugby Under-20s trophy and the Under-20s Championship.
So Scotland are in that, aren't they, the trophy?
Scotland are in the trophy, exactly, and then all the really good teams are in the Under-20 Championship. Good news as well, if you're in the UK, all of Scotland's matches in the trophy will be shown live and exclusive on BBC Alba and BBC iPlayer. All the other games will be shown on Rugby Pass TV. So far, no linear coverage in Wales, England, or Ireland for any Under-20s games this summer, which is disappointing, but it's probably understandable with the Euros in full flight. Also coming up, not this weekend, but the weekend after, we've got the inaugural Six Nations Women's Summer Series kicking off in Italy, and all games will be available worldwide on the Six Nations Rugby YouTube channels with supporting coverage across Six Nations social media channels. So that's good news. Brief update for any Premier Sports customers out there. If you're an existing customer, you're fine, but anybody who's thinking of signing up, they have increased their prices for their streaming and Sky prices. Check out Rugby Broadcast on Twitter if you want to see what those are. And yeah, we're still waiting on probably the biggest news for me, but no one's really talking about it. There's been no confirmation of her new broadcasting deal for the top 14 in Ireland or the UK from next season. So watch this space. Hopefully we'll have some news on that soon. And
I've just on that, we've had a few commenters lately on a few videos saying that they don't understand why the top 14 doesn't do more to market itself outside of France. We know it's huge in France, but like it doesn't do much. Like it doesn't post like English language highlights to YouTube. It doesn't seem to care about itself outside of the domestic market.
It's very strange. And there's obviously demand for there. It's such a fantastic product. And we've talked about it before, like there has been no broadcaster of the Pro D2 for 4 years in Ireland or the UK. And that's a massive disappointment as well, especially with the amount of talented players from this part of the world playing in the league. That's again, it's baffling. And they've got Thursday night games. Like what rugby is on Thursday night on TV? None. So, yeah, that's disappointing. And then anyone who out there looking for a rugby documentary, the All Blacks have put out their version of Chasing the Sun. It's called In Their Own Words. It's available to watch for free on YouTube or New Zealand Rugby Plus, otherwise known as NZR Plus. And still, we have no confirmation who is going to be showing Chasing the Sun 2 in this part of the world. All our South African fans out there, yeah, you're lucky you've seen it. We have yet to see it, unfortunately. And I think that's pretty much it for broadcasting news in terms of games coming up this weekend. It might be June, but there are still games coming up. Obviously, we mentioned previously, we've got the top 14 final. We've got the under-20s championship starting. And we also have, what else? We have MLR and we have the WXV playoff game between Wales and Spain. There's going to be free coverage on S4C for that. But as always, folks, we will have all of the fixtures in our Friday morning breakfast show, in our Substack, and on our social channels as always. Is there anything else you wanted to discuss, mate?
Shall we just talk about what the plan is for the pod over the summer?
Let's do it.
So we are now at the end of a very long season. Everyone's talked about how long the rugby season has been. So our first ever episode was 1st of August 2023. We're now recording this on 25th of June 2024, and I think we've had like 3 weeks off. So we're planning on taking a bit of a break. We're not going to do a show next week. As Enda said, it's only really the top 14 final that's on of the things that we would normally cover. URC's finished, Super Rugby's finished. There's no other international games. What we've decided that we'll do is we will cover the Irish and South Africa test series, and by association, any games that are played on the same weekends as those. And then we probably will take the rest of the summer off. To be open and honest with everybody, we don't think that the Rugby Championship is going to do much in terms of numbers for us. When we talked about like New Zealand and Australian rugby in the past, it hasn't done that much. We look at our demographics. Most of our demographic is UK and Ireland based. So we don't think that that's something that we're going to do. So basically, we're just going to take the opportunity to have a break. We are thinking of doing a preview pod for the Olympic Sevens, because we know that's something that a lot of people are going to probably be interested in. We are going to continue doing the Friday breakfast show. We're just not going to do the main pod. So we will probably chat a bit of Rugby Championship in our mini Friday morning show, which is 15 minutes long. Anybody not already listening to it, make sure you do. It's something we get lots of positive feedback from. We're going to continue doing the Sunday read, and all our socials will be continuing as normal. And there will be the mini docs and clips and things that we post on Saturday mornings will continue on the YouTube channel, although maybe not with the same regularity. So just it's a bit of a break for us. It's been really cool. I don't know, how have you felt doing your first ever podcasting rugby season, mate? How have you found it?
Yeah, it's been a whole lot of fun. Met a lot of people, had some really, really interesting guests. It's been a really, really positive experience. Blown away by the figures. And yeah, just for me, a huge thank you as well for everybody for tuning in. We've got people regularly tuning in. That's something special. When we first started off this thing, we said to each other we'd be happy if we managed to get our parents to listen. I still don't think my parents have listened, but we've managed to pick up some other people along the way. So yeah, just a huge thank you for me. It's been so much fun, and looking forward to continuing with the Friday morning breakfast pods and a few bits and pieces. And then we'll be back in full swing in September for all the glorious rugby that's going to be coming to your screens.
So our target, I think our little target when we started was to get monetized by 12 months in. And we actually managed to get fully monetized on YouTube 8 months in. And we're now on over 1,200 YouTube subscribers, which is mind-blowing to me. And when I look at the demographics and see that we have listeners or viewers in Italy, in Fiji, there was a point where like a third of our viewership was Fiji. that was just crazy to me, and I that blew my mind. We had the Manicello video that had like 27,000 views in Italy and things, and obviously we've got a lot of Irish viewers as well, which is so great. And I'm generally surprised by how much of our demographic is UK based, given that we don't really talk about the Prem or anything. But yeah, it's just been really cool. It's been really cool. So like I said, off next week, 2 pods to cover the big test series in South Africa and any other rugby that's happening those weekends, and then a summer off. So we'll see you in a couple of weeks, and cheers everybody for being part of the journey.
Thanks everyone.